Hello, my lovelies. Check, check. Is there anybody out there? It says that there is. If you are able to hear me or able to respond in the chat, that would be very much appreciated so that I know that I'm not having the trouble that I've been having the last couple of days. And I will give people just a second to get into the chat before I get started. Still doing my sound check. Got my glasses cleaner. And Mrs. Amir, hello, how are you? OMG, you were here yesterday when I did my 40-minute video that only 20 minutes of it was recorded. What a pain in my rear end. There was some good stuff in there too that didn't get recorded. So I'll have to dig it up out of me brain, which is always a challenge. How are you today, my dear? How is South Africa? So, yeah, I've just been dealing with a lot with all of the mayhem with my shadow banning. Like yesterday, I was feeling like I wasn't shadow banned, but I was actually getting banned because it froze up my first live and then major trouble trying to get back on live. And then finally I was able to, because I have that problem with not being able to give up. But I joke, it's not really a problem unless it becomes a problem. But it's good. It's good to keep at things, right? I mean, nothing's easy. You got to work hard for it. And then it just makes me so much more appreciative too that I've got the equipment and that I've got the persistence and that I've got the audience. So thanks for being here. Yeah, we were so curious and knew you onto something great when you couldn't even lock up the chat. The rant was real. Well, the things that I was talking about are hideous, and I'll mention them now and see if it gets cut off again. But essentially, I was talking about Little E, the man who was arrested for trafficking underage girls and then in prison in New York in 2019. And he was really good friends with El Presidente. He was very tight with a man from Ohio who I won't say his name because I think that goes into the algorithm, but he's the man who has owned, he's 87 years old. He just retired last year. He started the Limited back in the 80s. And then he also owned Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie and Fitch, Bath and Body Works, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So really what you're getting into with, he worked closely with Little E and a man named Michael Jeffries. So Michael Jeffries was arrested in the fall. These people have been doing this kind of heinous casting couch thing for young models for decades. And it's pretty effing rude. And it's so pervasive and it's right in your face. And then, we've got little t. So we got Little E and Little T. So that's the one who's deceased in jail in 2016 and the one who is a world leader right now. And then we got the Big E, which is the current owner of Tesla, who is hitting the skids. So the victimization is real in that industry. It's hideous. It's absolutely hideous. And it's probably so much more than we have any idea. I'm starting to get the picture that it's actively going on and that they've got farms, farms for their legions, these billionaire dudes. And it's just a question. It's just a suspicion. It's, I don't know. I haven't seen them. I haven't talked to people that have seen them. So it just seems like that's kind of what's behind it all. But let me start with all of my regular stuff. Yeah, the victimization is hideous. And then just like the misogyny and the victimization that comes out in all kinds of weird ways everywhere. And like with kids, right? Kids and the ladies. You saw Heg's death, Seth Death, that guy on Easter on the White House lawn with a gaggle of kids behind him. Hit that like button if you'd be so kind. So when I watched that the first couple of times, I was like, who are all those kids behind him? That wouldn't make sense that it's anybody's kids but his own. Like, why would they care what this guy is talking about? And the looks on their faces, just heartbreaking. And so, yeah, I looked it up like a lot of other people have in the last 24 hours and have come to realize that the 32-year-old Seth Death has 7 children. 7. So 4 are biologically his, 3 are stepchildren. They're all like in the same age range, about 6 years old to 11 years old, maybe. So the 6-year-old is the one that he got his 3rd wife pregnant with when he was still married to wife number 2. He's got a major problem with infidelity. Wife number 3, the one that he's currently married to. So she had 3 kids from her previous marriage. I was trying to look up to see if she was still currently married when she got pregnant and had Pete's baby too, which it wouldn't surprise me. But there was so much stuff that I'm taking notes on and trying to look up. So Jennifer Piochat, it looks like they got married August 19th of 2019. And the baby was born, I believe, in 2017. And he was still married to wife number 2 in 2017. Wife number 2 is the one he had the 3 kids with. So he got together with a work colleague, knocked her up when he was still married. And it wouldn't surprise me in the least if future wife number 3 was still in a marriage contract with somebody else. Like, yeah, really sick. And then to take somebody who behaves that way at work at Fox News, which is where they both worked, and then hire him to be the Secretary of Defense when he's 32 years old and has almost 0 experience. I mean, he's got a little bit of military experience, but not anywhere remotely close to what one should have given that position of power. And you're not doing anybody any favors when you put somebody into a position that is ill-equipped. You're certainly not doing them a favor, and you're not doing the our entire military a favor. You're not doing world peace a favor. I mean, look where it's gotten us. So here he is ranting on Easter Sunday in front of his horrified little children. So all of the kids with the looks of horror on their face behind him that are just like, Dad, no, please stop talking to those people. I mean, their faces just said it all. It was absolutely devastating. I was devastated for the kids. For him, I'm like, good, dude, go hang yourself, hang yourself publicly. He's just insane, and he's dangerous. And is he done yet? I mean, he's really close to the end, but let me do my disclaimer. Everything I say is simply my opinion for the sake of hoping to start a conversation, open up a discussion, learn something, be educational. All my videos are made for YouTube. It's an entertainment platform. And please make sure that you're still subscribed if you are subscribed. And if you're not, consider just subbing up. No commitment, and it's free. And it does a lot to help a content creator. Share a video of mine with somebody that you think might like my channel, and turn on your notification bell to ring. And yeah, Mrs. Amir, he's a really sick guy. I don't even like to say his name. It's sort of like Beetlejuice, right? Anyway, um, he should be about resigned by now. I would think that any minute. At the moment, the last I heard anyway, the Trumpster fire and uh, Pamela Bondi were still standing behind him and propping him up. But you know how that goes. Like they'll flip on a dime, right? Throw someone under the bus to save their own hiney. So yeah, talking about the town of New Albany, Ohio, which is just east of Columbus. It was this little tiny town of like 600 people. And basically, the man who owned all of those businesses for so long pretty much bought the entire town. And it was a farming town. And he turned it into massive warehouses. I'll see if I can put a link in the description to a documentary that I came upon about just about the town and about him. And it mentioned little E because he pretty much recruited little E to manage his money, but it seemed like they had a thing too. Like it seems like a major thing with a lot of these right winger Republican dudes is closet gay, maybe. And I'll just say it. I have no issue with anybody playing for both teams or however you want to say. But what I do have issue with is when they're repressed and then they take that out on other people. So it seems really, really blatantly obvious that that's what's going on with a lot of this. And yeah, little E seemed like a flamer, and then to have the women in their lives, you call those women beards. So like Ghislaine Maxwell would basically be little E's beard. And then it seems like the owner of all those big companies, it seems like his wife Abigail might be a beard. And you just got to wonder, even like with the big E and the little T, it seems like I mean, doesn't it seem like they have a bromance going? And back when little E was still alive, didn't it seem like little E and little T had a bromance going? And then we heard that story from that one beautiful model who came forward and said that she was dating Jeffrey back in like the 90s, I think. And they dropped by Donnie's tower, and Donnie was just all handsy with her, and she didn't know how to deal with the situation. And it seemed like the douchebag, the bromancers, it seemed like they were playing a game and kind of winking at each other and seeing what they could do to humiliate this woman. And then when they left, it sounds like Jeffrey broke up with her and like, why did you do that? Oh my goodness. And she was just really dazed and confused, being in her early 20s and dating this older, wealthy, very wealthy man in New York City. And it seems like they're just such con men. It seems that all of their wealth is essentially their tricksterness, right? So I think this part got cut off about William Barr. Remember the what was he, like the attorney general or something like that? William Barr's father was the headmaster at a very elite prep school in New York City called Dalton, and he hired Jeffrey to be a math teacher with kids, with high school kids. Jeffrey was 21 when he was hired, and the kids all picked up on his weirdness. They knew that he wasn't right in the head. And who knows what kind of crap went on there, but it was while he was there teaching math and physics, completely without a degree and without the credentials, but he lied and said he had them. And then he got a job on Wall Street, again, without the degree and without the credentials that he claimed to have. And then while he was on Wall Street, they figured that out. But then they decided to keep him because he was good at what he did. And so that's where the monster started. That's how he got his fictitious start, his fraudulent start. And then you had the founder of the Limited and the owner of Abercrombie Fitch, Victoria's Secret, and Bath and Body Works, and a bunch of other companies too. And then a lot of the abuse happened in New Albany. So that's where the owner of the companies lived, which is where he still lives. And even Jeffrey lived there for a while. So one of the many people that he abused was this very talented artist. I think this was part in that 20 minutes where I had no audio. Her name, I believe, is Maria Farmer. She was an artist from New York City that he recruited and, acted like it was this big opportunity as an artist, all expenses paid. And then when she was there in New Albany, out in the middle of nowhere, basically, in this giant mansion on this giant property of the richest man in the state of Ohio, still to this day. And she wasn't allowed to leave the house. She was not allowed to go outside without pre-authorization from the billionaire's wife, Abigail. And if you broke the rule and you went outside the house, you probably weren't going to survive because they literally had vicious dogs outside, as well as other, I don't know, alligators. I mean, I think there were armed guards, and they had the full cooperation of the local law enforcement. So Ghislaine, Ms. Maxwell, and Jeffrey assaulted this young artist. She was in her 20s. Together, they attacked her and molested her. And after it happened, she barricaded herself in a room and put a bunch of furniture in front of the door so that they couldn't get in. And she called 911, and they pretty much told her that they weren't going to do anything because they were owned by the billionaire, of course. And it's just a really sad story. She pretty much hid out for most of her life because she feared for her life. And then a few years ago, she started doing her art again. Like, she didn't even do her art. She hid out, and I think mostly worked as like a museum curator and things like that. So she was in the art field, but not creating art. And then she started creating art about her experience and her recovery and other victims' experiences and their recovery. And one of those victims is her little sister, who was 16 or 15 even when it started. When it was 1996 when they were both assaulted by Jeffrey and Ms. Maxwell. So we all know that Ms. Maxwell is in prison. She was sentenced to about 20 years, and that was just a couple years ago. And then there's this other guy. Is it Jean-Luc Brunel? I've got all my notes. A French model agent. Here, we got to do this. A French model agent who would recruit the young, beautiful women from France for Jeffrey to exploit, to assault. And let's see where his name is, because it's important to have these names. Yeah, Jean-Luc Brunel. So he passed away in prison the exact same way Jeffrey passed away in prison, but 3 years later. So his passing was February of 2022, so just 3 years ago. And so one of the things that the little E did, you guys, and I'm assuming, yeah, there's a couple more here. Thank you for being in the chat, Mrs. Amir. Let's see. And I got my arrow back. Yeah, they serve them on platters like pieces of meat. And let me highlight that one. Even though it's gross, it's the truth, right? I mean, you got to speak the truth. So before I forget, and then I'll read your last comment, is that one of the things that Jeffrey did is he had videotapes all over his property. He had videotapes in the bathrooms, in the bedrooms, everywhere. So people would come over, a lot of high profile and powerful, wealthy folks, and he would have all their movements on videotape, and he would have all these hot young women to tempt them with. And basically it was like gold that he kept in his safe. He had videotapes to blackmail everybody. So when he was arrested and the police raided his properties, they retrieved these tapes. They retrieved the evidence. And then my question is, what has become of the evidence? And my theory, Mrs. Amir, is that El Presidente inherited it. He inherited his jet, and I don't know who has taken ownership of his island. I don't know who's taken ownership of the 7-story Manhattan townhome that was like the largest home in Manhattan. He also had the home in South Beach, Florida, and then one in Santa Fe. So it would make a lot of sense to me that whoever has those tapes and has dirt on everybody could basically control the world. So some of the homies that they rolled with were like Vladdy and Sean Combs and Weinstein. I mean, all of them. They all hung out together. And ex-President Clinton is one of them, and so is Donnie. Not to mention Prince Charles and maybe even Lady Di's children, unfortunately. I know I've seen pictures of them hanging with Puffy. Back in the 90s, Donnie and Sean Combs hung out a lot. There's like hundreds of pictures of them online. And that's when Donnie was tight besties with Jeffrey. And like I said, Weinstein hung out with them. And what do you think these creeps did? What do you think they still do? What are they doing now? Ugh. Okay. Rant over for the moment. Yes, JP Miller. Mrs. Amir, you are so sharp. Yes, the deviance shows early, just like JP Miller. He started around 19. Well, he started around 19 that we know of. It probably started prior to puberty and then got a lot worse around puberty. And then we know that he was 19 when he assaulted a woman that was also 19 with a vehicle twice. Ran into her on purpose and drove with her on the hood of the car or something like that. So it's funny you mentioned JP because Seth Death is what I'll call him. Pete, we'll just call him Pete. His rant on the lawn of the White House on Easter Sunday, he sounded to me just like JP Miller. He sounded just like him, like the defensiveness, the anger, the attacking, and even like the cracking of the voice, like they're still going through puberty. So one of the other big things that we were talking about yesterday that I had not had enough time to let it sink in, but I think maybe I have now, is the passing away of Pope Francis, and how our vice president had requested to visit him. He refused the visit. He didn't even make up an excuse. He just said no. And then the vice president basically begged and pushed his way in, and Pope Francis, being the kind person that he was, met with him. The vice president very much imposed on him, and then opposed 2 handshakes, I think, right, Mrs. Amir? A handshake at the beginning of the interaction and a handshake at the end of the interaction. And we played that yesterday in that 2-hour live. I played it for you guys on the cell phone when you asked me to. And the interaction was so awkward, and it reminded me so much of that character, that the guy who does the comic TikTok thing walking in the park. Hi, I'm JD Vance for vice president running. What was it? Recalculating, rerouting, right? Rerouting. And how old are you? That's nice. How long have you been walking? I was 8 once. Were you ever 8? Anyway, I'm not doing a good job of it, but I put a link to that comedian's thing that went viral in the description from yesterday. So today in the description, I already have one comic video of the guy who is like very large and looks a lot like JD, and he puts mass amounts of eyeliner, and he does this really grotesque, over exaggerated portrayal of Vance. It's absolutely sickening. Like, the first few times I saw his videos, I was just like, ew, I can't even watch them. And it's just like so over the top and just cringeworthy. But then it kind of grew on me because it's really spot on. Really spot on. So he did a whole series of like 3 to 5 minute videos about the visit with the Pope. And man, are they sharp. So I put the sharpest one. I put the link in the description already, and I'll probably put 1 or 2 others from that same comedian in there. So when the chat asked me yesterday what I thought, and I was very conservative about my thoughts on it since I hadn't known very much about it. I just knew that he had visited with the Pope and that the Pope had passed away a few hours later. But having looked into it, having done some research, and having listened to a bunch of different videos from a bunch of different perspectives about it, it seems that there needs to be a thorough investigation. I mean, I honestly, I can't imagine that he would have done anything to be so blatant and evil, but nothing would surprise me, I guess, at this point. It's just, it seems so far-fetched. In a normal world, it's so far-fetched, but we are not in a normal world. And the Pope had been denouncing the leadership in our country and the deportations and all of that routinely. And even same day or the day before this visit on Easter. But man, the awkwardness of JD in the interaction with the Pope, it almost, if you based it on how he interacted with him, how Vance interacted with Pope Francis, you would think he definitely was up to something sinister, because he was so uncomfortable. He could barely construe a sentence. Okay, we'll check them out tomorrow. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm undecided. It seems ridiculous to think that anybody would do harm to a pope on Easter. And yes, the Pope was 88 years old. And yes, he was gravely ill for a long time. It's weird, though. And I definitely think that a complete investigation and autopsy need to be performed. It's unreal. But what I wanted to say most profoundly is just the idea that it's even a remote possibility that anybody could entertain that about a vice president on Easter with a pope. Just the idea that it's even a remote possibility is sort of all the information that you need right there. So even if he's innocent and he didn't do anything, just the mere fact that it's a possibility that he could have is, I think, the takeaway, basically, because we might not ever know, right? I mean, so much of true crime, we'll never know. We'll never know. Sorry, my nose is so itchy. I've been doing my allergy medication, but the weather's getting so nice, and it's just like a lot of hay fever for me. And I know in the area where I live in Miami Valley of the state of Ohio, it's like the most allergy ridden place in the country. So, not being a person that had a lot of allergies, I didn't really worry about it when we moved back. But it's also a very beautiful area. So, that's just what comes with it's almost like a tropical lushness in the summertime. And so to get from winter to that comes a lot of hay fever, basically. A lot of pollination in the air, right? So one of the other people that I was talking about yesterday, and I honestly don't remember if this was in the part that got not recorded or if it was in the part that got recorded. It might have been in both. Is this character? I think it was in both. This character, Sheriff Deputy John Mark Dugan from Palm Beach County, who fled the states in 2016 and took refuge in USSR, what was previously the USSR, and works for PP and runs about 150 fake news sites online and did a lot of interference with the 2024 election. So, I've been saying all along, for a long time, I've been talking about that I don't believe that this election was legit. I don't believe this election was legit. I didn't believe it from day one. And I have been delighted to see more people talking about it online. I've been delighted to see it getting into the mainstream media and getting into Congress. The idea of a lot of mathematicians and statisticians and um, people that have worked in politics studying the impossibility of how the numbers flipped and how the states flipped. And it's like beyond unlikely. It's just not possible. Some of these things, like, it reminds me of back in the 2000 presidential election with Bush and Gore, when Gore lost 19,000 votes in the evening. His votes were going backwards, which is not possible. And then Bush picked up several thousand of those votes, and then several thousand of them went to another party that would never have gotten that many votes, because, it pretty much is the Democrat and the Republican ticket that get all the votes. I mean, the other parties, you call those throwaway votes, because if you vote for them, unfortunately, it's probably not gonna do anything, because it's just a race between the Republican and Democrat tickets. So Anyway, I hear the doors slamming all over the house. The teenagers are home. The teenagers are home. Oh no. Run and hide. So yeah, I usually try to be through with my video before they get home, but that didn't happen today. So it's just a distraction for me, brain. So I think that the big E and the PP have been charged with election interference in some other countries, like maybe France. I'm not sure if where the charges are at. I know there's been allegations, but yeah, I'm so distracted now by the door slamming and then one of the dogs scratching at the door. Hold on a second. Come on, baby. Nope. The kids must have let them out back. So yeah, my brain is blank. Where are we? I put a photograph of Christy Nome basically holding a pew pew to another American's head for one of her little cosplay photo ops where she's trying to look all big and tough. You know, she's the puppy killer, the puppy unaliver that is also in charge of our national security, which is crazy. Absolutely insane. And she just like uses up all the Botox that's available on planet Earth. But anybody who waves a weapon around willy-nilly like that, I mean, that's how Helena Hutchins lost her life. And it's something that you just simply don't do. Anybody with any common sense knows that you don't ever point um, a weapon at anything that's alive. You just don't. Whether it's loaded or unloaded, whether it's been checked or not checked, you just don't do that. There's just way too many accidental uh, discharges that happen with firearms, and that would just be insane if somebody in a position like hers were to have an accident like that. But to have a photograph like that is absolutely outrageously crazy, which is why I used it for the thumbnail. Like, these people are so stupid, so dangerous, so stupid. Um, but I also wanted to talk about the mining of all of the Earth's precious resources and minerals. And it's really like a pillaging, like a plundering, to think that you can just take all of the elements from the Earth's crust and the Earth's core, and what is that thing in between called, like, the shelf or something? It's called the mantle. Come here, baby. The mantle, the shelf. Whoa, come on, Coco, watch out, baby girl. Come here, honey pot. So yeah, the minerals that are deposited in the Earth's crust, the mantle, in the core, and these people, these oligarchs that think that they can just take all of it without consideration that, first of all, they don't own it, it's not theirs. Like, and second of all, you can't just remove natural elements like that without having an impact on the environment and on the ecosystem. So it's nuts. Mrs. Amir says yes, he was the one to be seen with him on his last hours. Sus. Yeah, he was probably the last person to have physical contact with him. I don't know. Talking about the vice president and the Pope. It's really it's really creepy to even think for a second that that's a possibility, that something sinister like that would even be a thought. But a lot of people are thinking that it's possible. And I think that that is the takeaway right there, just that people don't trust Mr. Vance to not do something like that. I mean, he's the one who started the whole freaking the Haitians eating the cats and dogs here in Ohio. He's the one who started that and knew that it was a lie and didn't care. Ugh. And he's from here. He's also the guy who broke the freaking dropped the trophy. Like that was just like poetic. That was just like metaphorical. Like the man is just fumbling everything. Everything he touches turns to crap, basically, right? Same with Elon. So I didn't realize that Elon's a big gambler. Did you realize that, Mrs. Amir? I guess he's got a gambling problem, which makes sense. It fits with what we've seen with his involvement with our government in the last 12 months. Yeah. People with gambling addictions, it's much like a sexual addiction, much like a rug addiction. And he certainly seems like he's got the latter. I don't know about the copulation addiction. I don't know. I mean, there's theories that he can't even perform. There's theories that he's had some sort of implantation that went awry. And so all of his children, all of his legion come from in vitro fertilization. The one person that came forward recently and said the social media influencer, she said that they had physical relations. So if what she says is truth, then I guess that shoots that idea down. But yeah, it seems that he's got a person that works for him who carries around a suitcase of his seeds on ice. And that was the thing that kind of seeped out into the public, that he was offering people at the that worked for the big E. He was offering his seed to any takers. Anybody want to be a surrogate, basically, to have like the most socially awkward, ugly gargoyle thing that thinks he's super smart. Ugh. Okay, let's look at the notes here. There's so much to go over, and I don't want this one to be too terribly long after that 2-hour one yesterday. Let's see. So to finish that up, that concept of the legions, I've mentioned that I learned a lot about infertility when my husband and I started wanting to, when we wanted to start our family, and we had a lot of trouble conceiving because I was 28 when we started trying. And we didn't know that your female reproductivity is at its peak when you're 17. People talk about women being at their sexual peak when they're 31, but that's not their reproductive peak. That's more of like being adventurous in bed, basically. I think being like comfortable in your own skin and all that good stuff. But humans, females, are the most fertile at about the age 17. So it made me wonder, with all of this talk of having legions of babies, if there's any of that going on. And then especially when you factor in all of the children from Ukraine, the 20,000 estimated children from Ukraine that are being held in the USSR. And it's really nauseating to think about, but I would say the way these people are, it's not only a good possibility, it's unlikely that they're not taking advantage of folks like that. If these are their motives and this is their accessibility. Ew, it is really nauseating. I mean, this stuff is really disgusting to talk about and think about. Um, so let me look at my other notes. Can you hear the doors banging around? Man, why do the kids have to be so loud? It's crazy. I guess I could ask them to chill. Um, oh, I guess that Harvard has filed a lawsuit against the Trumpster fire for the accidental letter that the White House sent them that started that whole thing. So that's some good news. That takes the edge off, doesn't it? Um, but yeah, the White House is making a lot of mistakes. Like, I don't know, maybe getting an illegitimate person in the leadership role, maybe allowing this South African nut job to take over, maybe allowing an raging alcoholic to leak all of information that could cost people their lives. I mean, absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. So yeah, I've been wanting to talk to about the Game of Thrones because that's a television show that I know a lot of people got really into. It was just too vile for me. It was just too over the top with the you know, my husband watched it for a while and I would catch parts of some episodes and just I was like, man, I liked Sopranos, I liked 6 Feet Under, and that was about my limit, probably the Sopranos and the 6 Feet Under. But Game of Thrones was like a whole new level of disgusting, and it's very metaphorical, and I think that a lot of people take it way too seriously and don't see it metaphorically. They see it as this is how you have to roll if you want to be king, if you want to be number one. And it's pretty frightening. It's pretty grotesque. It's pretty barbaric. So that's what I think is going on behind the scenes, is a lot of very frightening, grotesque, barbaric crap. Like sending all those people to El Salvador when you don't even know if they're actually what you're accusing them of being. And then doing all of this like photo op crap to make it look like the grossest kind of concentration camps. The the level of dementedness that these people have to get pleasure from that and to want to see that and to want to brag about that, like it makes them feel what, like a man, that they can humiliate people and make people suffer and hurt people and just take away people's dignity and decency and like the most essential of rights, like food, water, sleep, using the bathroom. I mean, those detention camps in El Salvador, the lights never go out. There's no blankets. The bunks are made of steel. What are there, 80 people in a enclosure? I mean, it's so out of control. And then shaving all their heads and putting them all in the white boxer shorts and then lining them up for these photos. It's just like hideous. And then I'm so curious what in the world happened with those satellite images where it looked like the burgundy color stains on the ground in between the buildings, and then it looked like there was a pile of something that resembled the possibility of a pile of nude people. Um, like whatever happened with that? Was that just like bogus? Was that photoshopped? Was that artificial intelligence? Or was that for real? Like it's the fact that it's just gone away, that it hasn't really been verified or debunked makes me think that it might be true. I don't know. What do you think, Mrs. Amir? I'd hate to think that that could be true, but I would think that it wouldn't just kind of go away by itself, that there would be like an active, let's either shoot this down as fake news, or if it's confirmed, then you got to do something about it. So if it's true and they don't want to confirm it because that's just too freaking gory and grisly, and then what do you do? What do you do if you're our government and you have to admit that you participated in that? I mean, like that's like war crimes right there. So I'm curious about that. I'm very curious about that. I have to go to bed and we'll catch a replay tomorrow. Have a blessed day. Love and light. Well, thanks for being here, my dear. And sorry to um, end on such a negative note. If you're still here, that was a couple minutes ago, I think. So maybe I'll wrap up after we talk about something positive other than jewelry, right? Or the lighting or the puppy dogs. Um, yeah. There is this one guy. I forgot all about him. Ugh. What is his name? I think I have it. Did I write it down? Did I not write it down? Did I look it up a whole bunch of times and not write it down? That would be nuts. It's possible though that happens. So Jeffrey Sessions was involved in that Duke lacrosse crap, and this other guy. I might need to look it up to see who it was. Um, yeah, I might not have it here. And the guy is disgusting. I think actually I might have it in some notes in my phone. Let me see if I do. Alexander Acosta. Does that ring a bell? That man is so effing sick. Alexander Acosta had a lot to do with that hideous case at Tufts University with the lacrosse team and um the he said she said situation that I don't know which is true and accurate. I know that the way it went down in the history books is that it was fabricated allegations and that the lacrosse players all got paid out $20 million from Duke University. But just because that's the way it went down um, officially, that doesn't mean that that's truth. So here's a photograph of him. Ew. Oh my goodness. Ugh, I can't. It's I don't know if you can see this. It's so hard to see when Alexander Acosta. So it's a guy, and yeah, it's really hard to see with the glare. If you saw his face, you'd recognize him in a heartbeat. He's one of these, like as bad as the Stephen Miller guy, but his wife is really creepy too. I'm going to put this photograph of the two of them since I'm trying to show it to you and I can't get, I don't think I'll be able to make it so that you can see it. I will put, yeah, maybe like that. There we go. I'll try to put it on a community post. So that's Alexander Acosta. I would imagine everybody would recognize him when once they get a good look at him. Again, I know it's terrible with the glare of the phone, so I apologize for that. But I had forgotten all about him. I'd forgotten all about Jeffrey Sessions too. It's insane how hard it is to keep up with all the mayhem, isn't it? Um, so yeah, I do like to try to keep up with it though, just to stay ahead of the game. Christopher Titus, are you familiar with that comedian? He did a wonderful video last night about the stolen election. So there's been a lot of different channels that have had that in their content and that have had these mathematicians and statisticians and people that know a lot about polling and know a lot about the computer systems. And it's great to see more research being done and more information being shared. But I try not to get my hopes up that something will be done about it. And at the same time, like, how could anything not be done about it as it becomes so glaringly obvious? I kind of assumed that everybody knew that like all of the people in the government knew in the beginning that it was a stolen election, but that dealing with the former Soviet Union being behind it, that it's just like if Tony Soprano hijacked it, it's like what realistic option do you have to fight against that, right? So I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to wrap it up since I got no one in my chat. Love and light, people. Thanks for watching. Have a really great afternoon, and I will see you on the next one. Drink your water, eat your veggies, eat your protein. I don't tell you these things to preach. I tell you these things because I always have to remind myself. So you are very much appreciated. Thanks for being here, and see you on the next one.